Good morning, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy and Passionate World Talk Radio. Jeannie White is the producer and writes the blog, and I would really appreciate it if you can read the blog and share this show. And also subscribe to Chatting with Betsy on Apple, Google, iHeart, CastBox, Spreaker, and Spotify. That way you won't miss my shows. I have a very special guest with me today who I'm honored to have on. We're going to talk about a hot topic today. Here on Chatting with Betsy, I do talk about the taboo. We need to start talking about topics. You may not agree with my guest, and that's okay, but everyone has a right to live the way they want and to die the way they want, and without judgment. And I'm so excited to have my guest, Kelly Bone. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you.
Could you please tell us about yourself, what you would like the listeners to know?
I sure can. My name is Kelly Bone, and I live in Florida, and I'm 58 years old. And when I was 57 years old, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. My mother and my uncle and my grandparents, my mother had early onset Alzheimer's. My uncle and my grandparents had dementia. And I decided to get genetic testing several years ago and found out that I had 2 APOE4 genes. And then my husband and I had been noticing over the last couple of years that I was showing symptoms. So I decided I would go and get diagnosed, or at least see if there was a problem. So I went to the University of South Florida Tampa Alzheimer's Health Institute, and I did get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. So I have been very active, and I work out like a crazy person, and I'm dieting and doing the Mediterranean diet and trying to do everything I can to keep this disease at bay. But I am very interested in pursuing at some point when the time comes doing dying with dignity and dying when I determine that my quality of life has progressed to a point where it's no longer desirable for me to live. So I know that's a very controversial topic, and I know it's something that you're interested in speaking to me about.
Yes, it is very controversial. I think that it's a great topic to talk about, and I admire you for coming on and speaking about it. I love the fact that you are doing what you can to fight off this disease as long as you can. I think that's great. When my husband was diagnosed 10 years ago, one of the doctors told Matt, exercise is the best medicine. That's the best that you could do. And my husband survived 10 years with early onset. And, he walked the first 5 years, but then he couldn't. So okay. I think what you're doing, is great. And I think people, even if, they don't agree with your choice, I think it's a choice that's yours for you to make. And, I know it's something that me personally I couldn't do, but I understand why somebody would want to end their life on their own terms. And I have seen this over and over again. You want quality of life, which is what everybody should have. What would be your point, Kelly, when you would say, I don't want to go on anymore? At what point would you say that would be for you?
Well, I took care of my mom. She was in an assisted living, and I was there with her. In fact, I ended up moving into the nursing home with her for the last several months. And I saw everything that she went through, and I don't want to be like that. And quite frankly, I thought towards the end of her care that I thought I might, as a caregiver, pass away before she did because, it was so traumatic and it took so long, and her quality of life was diminished several years before the time that she actually passed away. And there's a couple things. I first of all, I don't want to do that to my loved ones. I don't want them to give up their lives taking care of me when I really don't have much quality of life left, and I'm really not getting much joy. And number two, I don't feel that sitting in a situation where maybe the only person I know would be my husband, but I really don't know anybody else by name, and that I'm, not able to toilet on my own, and I'm in adult diapers, and I'm having a hard time swallowing and having a hard time eating. That's not quality of life to me. To be honest with you, I'm the type of person where even if I was a quadriplegic, I don't even know if I'd want to live in that situation. I'm a very active person, and I get joy out of being active and doing things. And if I can't do that, and if I can't be active, and if I can't be cognizant of what I'm doing, enjoying it, and that I have to have a caregiver 24/7 to make sure I'm not hurting myself or doing harm to somebody else or something like that, or wandering away, that's not my idea of quality of life. And so, I'd like to be able to say when I'm totally cognizant, like I am now, that when I reach a certain point where, I'm not able to toilet on my own, that I'm not able to smile, or not so much smile, but I'm not able to recognize people, and I'm not able to eat, that I'd like to be able to end my life in a dignified way. Now, I am in no way suicidal whatsoever. I love my life. My husband and I are traveling. We're doing our bucket list. I'm very active. I walk. I do water aerobics. I play golf. I have a lot of friends. So I am not suicidal in any way, stretch, or form. However, I do want the opportunity to be able to make that decision on my own. And I know my mother would have wished that she could have done that as well. And she used to tell me that. She used to say, gosh, I just hate that I'm going to be doing this to you. And, she could feel herself declining, and she saw what she was going through. And she kept saying, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live like this. And it's just sad that you're stuck in a body, that your body's still working, but your mind's not.
Yes, and I understand that completely, because it was very hard for me to watch my husband deteriorate. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. Can you tell the listeners, and I love the fact that you are enjoying your life to the fullest. This is what people have to know, folks. Kelly's enjoying her life to the fullest. She loves her life, but she desires to want her wishes known, that when she reaches a certain point, she would like to end her life on her terms. And, there's nothing wrong with that. Tell the listeners about the situation in America where there are states that allow physician-assisted suicide, but because you have dementia, you're not allowed to make that decision, even though you're very cognizant now. But they won't let you prepare for that. Can you tell the listeners about that? Because that's very interesting.
Yes, I'm pretty educated on this whole topic. There are 9 states in the United States that allow assisted suicide or dying with dignity, and they will allow it for many different diseases like cancer, but they will not allow it for Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, or multiple sclerosis. So you can't die if you have those diseases in those states. There are other places that you can go, like Switzerland and the Netherlands, where you can do it. But in Switzerland, you would go to a place called Dignitas, and what they would do is that you have to fill out all the paperwork now, which I've done, and you have to pay a $4,000 fee for the application, and then they review it. They get the doctor's records from your doctor. They review it, and then if they approve it, then they will allow you to come over there and do it. However, you have to do it when you're still fairly cognizant. And so, for example, when I was talking to them, they said that all of my books have to be on the shelf. And so what that means is that if I'm not able to administer the medication on my own, then I would not be able to do that. And so when I was talking to them, I said, so I would have to be able to put the little needle into my arm on my own, and I'd have to be able to understand your instructions to do so with no assistance from my loved ones. Is that correct? And they said yes. Well, that could be within the next couple of years, and I'm only 58, and I'm still doing pretty well, and I'm only at the beginning stage of stage 3 of Alzheimer's. And so to me, that seems fairly early for me to have to do death with dignity. And so that's an option for me, and I'm considering it, but it's probably not a viable option for me. The other one is the Netherlands, and they just passed a law that said that they will allow people with advanced dementia to do death with dignity. However, what happened was a couple of years ago, they had a lady who did it, who this doctor, I think her name was Dr. Marinu Ahrens. She was a geriatric doctor, and she agreed to do it for this lady several years before. The lady had made the decision when she was cognizant. She had signed all the paperwork with her family members. And when they signed it, everything was ironclad. And then, move forward several years later when she no longer has her wits about her and she's no longer cognizant, the family said, okay, we believe it's time that she would want to do this. And so the doctor agreed to go ahead and do it. When the doctor started administering the medication to her, the lady started fighting, and she pulled it out, and she didn't seem to want to do it. And so the family members said, no, we know this is what she wants to do. We want you to go ahead and do it. So the doctor went ahead and did it, and then they pressed murder charges against her. And it was just upheld in the court system in the Netherlands that it was okay for her to do, and it's been a very controversial topic, but it has been upheld. So personally, I give that doctor a lot of credit for sticking to her guns and doing what she believed in, and I think what the family members did is appropriate because that is what their mother and their grandmother told them to do. And so I'm looking to the Netherlands as well to see if they would allow somebody from the United States to come over and do something like that as well there. I'm having a difficult time finding contacts there. So if anybody knows anybody from the Netherlands, I do have a few contacts, but it's hard because a lot of the websites are in Dutch and things like that. So I'm doing all of my research to see if there's any possibilities. And then I also have a couple other things that I'm looking into. There are several organizations in the United States who support this, and there's Facebook groups that support it. And so I'm looking at seeing if I can help champion this effort with senators and congressmen and go to them and talk to them about changing the law. I don't see why someone like me cannot make a video. Like, why can't I make a video next week clearly stating what I want and saying that, when I get to this point, this is what I'd like, and I'm not going to press charges against anybody, and I'd like to be able to do that. So there's organizations that are kind of championing that effort, so I'm trying to join up with them. Also, there's another organization that I don't want to mention the name, but it's an underground organization that will also assist in that capacity if you need it. So there's a lot of things going on in this avenue, but I'd like to be able to do it legally, and I'd like to be able to do it above board, and I'd like to be able to tell my family members that this is what I'm going to do, and I'd like them to be able to come with me when I decide to do it. But right now I don't have that option.
I think doing a video of what your wishes are is a great idea. And that way people can refer to it and say, well, this is the video, and she made it in such a year, and you were of sound mind when you did it. And I think that's an excellent idea. I think more people should think about doing a video stating what their wishes are. Then that way there would be no argument amongst the relatives or siblings.
Betsy, there's a website and an app called mydirectives.com, and you can go to that website and you can upload your trust documents, your advanced directive, your medical durable power of attorney, and all that stuff. And you can put all of your information out there, and then you can also make a video. And then you can provide it to your loved ones so that when the time comes that you get placed into a assisted living or a nursing home or what have you, and when you get to the point where you're entering hospice, you can show them and say, look, this person made a video of their wishes. Now, whether or not the doctors in that state that person's located in will adhere to that is a different story, but at least you've got it out there.
Right. Yeah. What is the name of that app, Kelly? Can you repeat that again, please?
My directive.
My directive. Oh, okay. Good to know. That is really expensive. You said $4,000 just for the application?
Yeah, so that's not even ensuring that they're going to take you.
Wow, that doesn't even include, your airfare and accommodations to go over there.
Right.
I have heard that in the Netherlands that they do euthanasia, and it's, as you know, very controversial here. Here in New Jersey, they were going to have the right to die, but it was put on hold. Somebody was suing, I think, the Supreme Court. They didn't agree with it.
Yeah.
I feel this way, Kelly. Whether I agree with you or anyone else, it's your choice. And I think people, especially with the terminal illness such as Alzheimer's or any other disease where you are Parkinson's, where you do, and there's many others, deteriorate, I think that person has a right to say, at a certain point, I don't want to live like this. And that's my right. I mean, I've heard of people, Kelly, saying that if they find out they have any kind of dementia, they have a package of pills ready. And, it's really a person's choice. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've told my son, if I should get dementia, just throw me in a home, or you could OD me on my migraine medication. Well, I know he wouldn't do that, and that would be kind of hard for him to want to do that to his mom. But I can definitely understand it, because I don't know if I want to live to that extent. I saw it with my husband. I saw it with my mother-in-law. And and to a certain extent, my dad. And I really don't want to live like that. I mean, I don't think I would. And I think what you're doing is very courageous. I really do. And I think it needs to be brought out to the world and to the spotlight that, we don't have a choice on, how we're born. Why can't we have a choice on how we die? My grandfather, he had cancer of the pancreas. He said to my dad, well, they shoot horses, don't they? He didn't want to live anymore. He was suffering. Mm-hmm. And, people might think, yeah, I mean, people might think, oh, that's terrible, Betsy, comparing your grandfather to a horse. Well, he said it. I didn't. But, they put animals down when they get to a certain point. And I'm not comparing a person, a human being, to an animal. But why can't a person, when they're at a certain point, say enough's enough? And the medical world, they're taught to keep people alive. And they'll go to great extents to keep somebody alive. Well, why can't they? I think they need to change the philosophy and let people die with dignity. Let people decide when they want to go, especially when they have a terminal illness. Now, I have to ask you this, Kelly, and I don't know if you know the answer. Do they let people with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, make that decision?
I believe that was one that was on there as well that you cannot, if I remember correctly. I think there's 4 of them. I don't think it was one of them that you can in these states.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, because that's really a tough disease.
Cognitive component to it. Now, the other thing is, which is interesting, is I think, Betsy, that I did an interview with Being Patient as well, and I've had people come to me and say, Kelly, you could use these types of pills. They tell me what kind of cocktail to use, if you will, with pills to hasten my death. And that's great, and I know I could do that, but I don't know for sure if I would take the right amount, and I don't know how painful it would be and what have you. If I could just put something in me where, from my understanding from the medications that they use in these other states and stuff like that, it's a relatively painless death. I don't know why I can't do that. So instead, they're forcing people like me, who you said, there are some people who said, you know what, I've got pills ready when it comes time. Well, I don't want to have to do that. I want to be able to die with dignity, with my family there, and kind of go out peacefully. I don't want to take some pills and not know, whether I'm going to end up brain dead, but or still alive, but in a terrible shape and things like that, or vomiting and things like that. I don't want to do that, but they're kind of forcing us to go down that avenue. Now, I don't think I will choose that approach because that's not me. I am unfortunately looking at various different paths. I'm looking at, obviously, my number one choice would be to die with dignity in potentially another country, or if I could change the laws within the United States here. But I'm also looking at going into an assisted living facility. So my husband and I are researching those now and looking at going and checking them out and figuring out which one I want to go to. So I'm looking at both options, and also looking at, how long I could stay at my house and have, caregivers come in and help my husband take care of me. But it's sad that I have to follow up on so many different approaches instead of having something like that available to me to help me meet my end-of-life wishes.
You're absolutely right. And I really admire you for being very vocal. When I saw you on the interview with Deborah Kahn, I said, I had to have Kelly on my show because I talk about the taboo, and this is one of the topics. When someone has a disease that's terminal, especially when you can't remember and you don't remember and you're, are totally dependent on someone, some people do not want to live that way. And
right.
Some people might say, Kelly, you're not God. So what do you think God would say about that? I'm sure you must get that a lot.
Yes, I do. I have people, I've had cousins tell me that they don't agree with me and they can't support me because, they're very religious and they don't feel that it's the right thing to do. I've had people that I don't know write me on Be Patient, and then write me privately. I've had people write me on my blog telling me that they don't agree with it because of their religious beliefs. And my response is, that's fine, and I don't judge you for your beliefs and how you want to go, and so you shouldn't judge me for mine. You're not in my shoes. And I would say that many people who are making that judgment might not have sat with somebody who's been dying for a long period of time and watched them slowly die and slowly suffer and watch them slip away like that and watch their quality of life diminish. And then, honestly, my mom lived for, I would say, a good 2 years where she had no quality of life whatsoever and didn't enjoy herself. But yet, she was trapped in that body, just like people with ALL. And it's not your choice to make, it's my choice to make. And so it's not hurting you. And so, in my opinion, you shouldn't weigh in on what I want to do.
That's right. And I want to make this clear to the listeners. Kelly and myself, we're not promoting that, everyone should go out and do this, or that life is not sacred or valuable. That's not what we're saying. And I want to make this clear to the audience, what Kelly wants, and not just hers, there's many others, is the right to die in her time when she feels she doesn't have the quality of life. That is a personal, individual decision. So I want to make that clear. We're not saying, someone is disposable. When that person should have the right to choose. And I have to be honest, Kelly, when, seeing Matt suffer, I used to pray every day that God would take him. I couldn't take seeing him suffer.
Yeah.
And really, I feel like this really is going to be very taboo, what I'm about to say. You know, when you're in hospice, they give medications to help relieve the pain. So what is the difference, really? They relieve the pain, and then the person, such as, you know, Matt, I can only compare to my experience, so then Matt can no longer eat or drink. So Matt is dying a slow death. So what's the difference, really, of that and just having a one-shot deal and getting it over with, so you don't have to go through that? You know, you watch somebody go through 6 days or how many days of they're not eating or drinking and their body is shutting down. It's not a pleasant sight at all. So I definitely can, you know, empathize with your decision and doing, you know, what you want to do. And I just think it needs to be brought up to the public. And I think states need to really reconsider that when someone who has dementia or some other disease, if they do it in the beginning of their diagnosis, just like you're, you know, doing, and do it on video and saying, you know, this is day, you know, July 20th, 2020, you know, I'm Betsy Wurzel, a sound mind, and this is what I want to do. Right. I think that should be honored. You know, I want the listeners, you know, write into us, write into the station, and tell us how you feel about this topic. Whether you agree with it, you know, or not. I would really like to know the response, because I never talked about this topic before. So I would like to see people's opinions. And Kelly,
well,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that's interesting is I've had people tell me, too, you know, Kelly, you need to be careful because somebody might report you, and they might, you know, the police department or somebody might come and say that they need to put you in a psych ward and have you evaluated because you sound like you're suicidal. I am not suicidal. I love my life. I'm very happy. And I think anybody who knows me, anyone who is my neighbor, who hangs out with me, my family members, I am not a depressed type of person. I'm never depressed. I have a very strong will. I've had a very strenuous job that required me to be very strong. I've been through a difficult divorce. I'm not a depressed type of person. So, you know, I can see how if somebody was a depressed type of person, how this would be an easy out for them. This is a very difficult decision for me to make because I do want to live for a long time. And if I could live till I was 95 and have quality of life, I'd be all for it. You know, as long as I was in good shape, I'd be all for it, you know, if I had some quality of life. But that is probably not likely with early onset Alzheimer's. And so I just want to make it clear that, I am not the type of person that would go and do something like that. So, if people have that concern about me, please don't think that.
I didn't take it. When I saw you on the interview, I did not at all get that impression. I knew you weren't suicidal. I knew exactly what you're talking about because I've heard it from, others. No, not suicidal at all. I mean, if you were suicidal, you would be doing it now. You would just want to, I feel you would just want to end it now. And there are some people who have done that because they don't want to and they couldn't do it in a legal avenue. So I think that what you're doing, you have a right to do. And we need to honor people's wishes. And it's not if you agree with someone, it's honoring and respecting their wish. And I think we need to honor people's wishes who are dying, and I've talked about it on my show many times, that make your wishes known, and you may not agree with it, but you should honor it because it's not, like it wouldn't be, if I wanted something done and I would expect Josh to honor it, even if he didn't agree with it, it's not his wish, it's my wish. So that's what I would want. And I do understand where you're coming from, and I really admire your courage, because it is very courageous to come out and talk about the taboo when people don't, agree with it. And I want to tell listeners, Kelly, like, you're very active with the Alzheimer's Association. So
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? I mean, you are very active. You're
Yes,
not sitting home and, being depressed and waiting to die. You are living life. And you're a role model for others who have whatever dementia to live life to the fullest while you still can. Go ahead and tell the listeners how much involved you are.
Sure. When my mom was ill, I got involved in the Alzheimer's Association just by participating in the Walk to End Alzheimer's, and I was fundraising for them. And then when I got my diagnosis, I went to the Alzheimer's Association, and I signed up to go to a support group meeting. Well, when I went to the support group meeting, I realized that the people in the support group meeting, I hate to say this, they were sitting in the meeting and they were like sitting there with deer in the headlights. They were just terrified. And because I had been through it with my mom, I knew what to expect, and I knew why they were terrified. But I also knew that I had it, and that if I am terrified and if I don't do something about it and I don't do something to improve my health and keep healthy, that I would be going down quickly, just like my mother did. And so I went and spoke to the people at the Alzheimer's Association, and I said, what can I do to help? And I said, and they said, well, you seem to know a lot about it. And they said, you were talking in the meeting, and boy, you're very well educated on this topic. And I said, well, my mom had it, my uncle had dementia, my great uncle had dementia. I've been through it a lot, so this isn't something new to me. So they said, well, why don't you volunteer? So I started volunteering, and I now help facilitate Alzheimer's support group meeting in another location, as well as that other location. I volunteer on the Brain Bus in Florida, and I also participate in different events, giving out information and going and speaking to church groups and things like that about Alzheimer's disease. And I think that's important for me because it gets me out and it gets me talking to people, so it's socialization. It helps me share my knowledge. And I get energized when I hear people say, well, gosh, I'm not really doing anything, or I'm sitting home and I'm reading books and I'm doing crossword puzzles. Well, those aren't activities that are necessarily good for you. Reading is a sedentary activity, and it's okay to do for a short period of time, but really the best thing you can do is getting the blood flowing through your heart and your brain and getting oxygen going to your brain and getting through the blood barrier. And so I talk to people about changing your diet, going on the MIND diet or the Mediterranean diet, exercising, using Brain HQ as one of your brain games, and all the different things you can do to keep your brain healthy. And so it's good for me and it's good for them.
I think that's fantastic. I wish more people with any type of dementia would come on my show and speak up wherever they are, because I have always said this, we need to bring all dementias out of the closet and into the spotlight and shine the attention on it. And I think when people see someone that's vibrant like you, they will change the image of Alzheimer's, because people think, it's an old person's disease or it's a normal part of aging, and it's not. And that's why I started to raise awareness, because back 10 years ago, they didn't recognize early onset. So I got in my car and I said, this is the picture of Alzheimer's. This is the new image. This is the new face. You can be in your 50s. You could be, any age. My husband was 56 at diagnosis. Yeah. And can you tell listeners, Kelly, where they can get in contact with you and about your blog and how they can contact you if they would like to?
Sure. Yep. In fact, I'll send you my blog URL if you could post it with this when you send this out, Betsy. That would be helpful. But my blog is called Living My Best Life with Alzheimer's, Not Going Down Without a Fight. And it's on WordPress. And it's interesting that you said that earlier, Betsy, because my blog that's going to go out tomorrow is The Faces of Alzheimer's, of Early Onset Alzheimer's. And it's a picture of me and my girlfriend, who's 54 years old, who's just a beautiful blonde gal. And then also my friend Jenna, who's 34 years old, and she has early onset Alzheimer's. And so I written a blog about that, you know, the picture that people have in their minds of Alzheimer's is somebody who's in their 80s. And, you know, if you look at the stamp that came out by the Alzheimer's Association that is at the post office, you know, it's an elderly person. Well, this is impacting a lot people who are a lot younger now, and they're saying that it's going to triple by 2050. And 1 in every 6 people now get Alzheimer's disease, and they're expecting it's going to triple by 2050. And there's no cure in the horizon for this disease. And so we need to find something quickly because, you know, it's going to impact all of our children, all of our grandchildren. You know, and my hope is that we find a cure in my lifetime. But if not, for sure, I want to make sure we eradicate it for my children and my grandchildren.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I know my son is at very high risk, and I would love a cure now. I wanted a cure in that lifetime, but that didn't happen, and I would love a cure like yesterday. That's what, you know, we want. And I just, you know, so admire you, and thank you for taking the time for coming on my show. And I really appreciate you speaking out on a so-called taboo subject, because people really need to realize that just because someone chooses to end their life at a certain time, they are not, and I'm going to repeat, they are not suicidal. They are making a choice. Okay, it's not like they're going out in the backyard and doing it. They're planning it at a certain time, when they reach a certain time in their illness. And I think that's very courageous thing to do. I really do. And folks, you know, don't judge, because if you haven't walked in someone's shoes, you don't know what it's like. And if you haven't seen someone suffer, and people will say, oh, people don't suffer with Alzheimer's. Well, yes, they do. They do to a certain extent. The hallucinations, when you see someone, you know, suffering with that, I have seen it firsthand, and I can tell you that my husband did suffer. And I admire what Kelly is doing. And Kelly, you have my support 100%. You could come on my show anytime. And
Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for coming on. Folks, let me know what you thought of this topic. What is your thoughts on it? What would you do if you had Alzheimer's or some other dementia or illness that was terminal? So you could write in and tell me. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy at Passion World Talk Radio. Again, if you missed this audio cast, you can catch it on Spotify and Spreaker, iHeart, CastBox, Podchaser. And folks, you know what? Don't judge. Really, it's easy to judge and to say, oh, I wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't think of that. But you know what? You don't know. You don't know until you are in that situation. And my heart goes out to all the people who have made that decision and are making that decision, and we need to speak up. So if you want to come on my show and speak up, you're more than welcome. And I want to tell everyone just to be kind. You know, in this world, we need kindness. So shine your light bright until we chat again. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy and Passion World Talk Radio. Bye-bye.